Welcome to the Nerd Social. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Colin.
Hi, everyone. So, tonight we're going to talk about What If Episode 9, entitled What If the Watcher Broke His Oath, in Titans Season 3, Episode 11, entitled
hmm
The Call is Coming from Inside the House. As always, we will give our spoiler free thoughts about the episode and then we will jump into a spoiler discussion. So, before we start with the spoiler-free conversation about what if, the Disney Plus summary this week was pretty short. It basically was the title. So the Disney Plus summary is "What if the Watcher broke his oath?" I guess they didn't want to spoil anything about the episode, and even in the sentence that they put with their summary. So, Colin, what did you think of the season finale of season one of What If?
I think that it was a pretty good ending to season one. There was some talk about online is also, this is like non-spoiler stuff,
Mm-hmm.
about coming together to form what they call the Guardians of the Multiverse and how the Watcher would get involved. We just didn't know how he would get involved, but there was already some signals that was given in the previous episode that he was going to somehow get involved, and also the impending doom of Ultron with the Infinity Stones. Already that was already established from the previous episode. Not spoiling anything that we haven't seen. If you haven't seen the previous you've seen the previous episode, you know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't seen What If, it's probably, I have probably spoiled some of it already, unfortunately. But in any case, I think it was a overall solid ending, and they had to really wrap up a lot of things, and pretty much a pretty standard Marvel type of pomp of circumstance. There's some twists and reveals, but also some culminations of things that were left that were left in a thread before, and they're kind of wrapping it up together. So there was a couple of things that they kind of wrapped up, and that was pretty good to kind of have a very satisfying ending to some of the things that we've seen in the earlier What If episode. So overall, I would say pretty solid. It's not like anything that's mind blowing or anything like that, I would, in my opinion, but overall solid. Just enjoy it, and it's fun, and there's definitely gonna be more in season two. So, but yeah, definitely enjoyed the whole What If experience.
Yeah, it was a good episode for me as well. I think it was a good wrap up for the season. Without giving anything away, they did touch on pretty much every episode of the season was referenced in this episode. I think the only issue with this episode for me is the same issue that I've had with some of the other episodes in the season. Not all of them, but some of them. Basically, because they try to cram all this into 30 minutes or 33 minutes, it seems a little short, and there are a couple beats where I would have appreciated if it was a 45-minute or even an hour episode where they could have kind of expanded on certain things. But for basically a team up movie, a Marvel superhero team up movie in 30 minutes, it was a pretty good writing and pretty effective writing. They basically had the first season of this show be similar to like phase one of the Marvel universe, where you had the single movies and they came all together in the Avengers movie. But
hmm
it's far more juggling because their Avengers movie didn't have as many characters or as many movies before the Avengers movie, as this show had episodes. Uh,
Mm.
I know that there's some talk back and forth online about the inconsistencies around the Infinity Stones, which we can get into when we talk in spoilers. I didn't really have much of an issue with that because I think a lot of people's issues have to do with what they know from the comics, and they're not the rules that are in the comics are not necessarily established in the MCU. We have to go by the rules that they've established in the MCU, and then if they violate those rules, then we should have an issue.
hmm
But all in all, I it's hard to talk about this episode because you mentioned that a team is put together, but even I think even if I mention who's on the team, it's sort of a spoiler. So I don't want to necessarily go even down that path. But it is interesting to see the Watcher's mind at work by the end of the episode. In his thinking about why he put these particular people together on this team. So yeah, I like the episode. I'm looking forward to season 2 of What If. I know that this unfortunately hasn't been everyone's favorite thing for some reason. People just, I think we talked about this earlier in the season. People just like live action stuff more for whatever reason. Even though we can do more, I guess, fantastical things with animation. So I don't know. I appreciated the episode. I appreciated the season and the show, and I hope that similar to like Cobra Kai when it was on YouTube. Hopefully, people come to the episode, come to the show later on, and it gains more popularity because I definitely want. I need 10 seasons of What If because they have enough material. They have enough material that they could do seasons for 10 years, and they're continuing to make Marvel content. So now after season 1, they can start talking about stuff to happen in phase 4, not just the movies that are going to come out, like the movies that we just now saw, like Black Widow and Shang-Chi, but also all the television shows. They can do what ifs about the television shows as well. So yeah, they have a well that they keep even making even deeper that they can draw from in making these episodes. But we shall see. I know that we are getting at least another season 2 of this show, and because at least one of the episodes that was supposed to be part of season 1 got pushed to season 2. But I think more people have to kind of, I don't know, find this show and find the value in this show for them to continue investing in it. So
yeah.
Anyway, at this point we should probably start talking about the episode in more spoiler details. But if you are enjoying the conversation, please like and subscribe. It really does help the channel. It helps other people find the our content. So please do that. And with that, let's get into our spoiler discussion of What If episode 9. So I guess now I can talk about who the Watcher actually chose. So you got Strange Supreme, which is not much of a spoiler at all because we got him at the end of the last episode, right? Strange Supreme. We got Captain Carter from the episode 1. We got Star-Lord T'Challa from episode 2. We got Party Thor from episode 7. We got Black Panther Killmonger from episode 6, I believe. And we got Gamora, a Gamora variant that fought on Sakaar, and that Gamora is probably from the episode that was pushed to season 2. There's a lot of speculation online about what the plot of that was, but it looks like, so when the Watcher plucks her from her universe, she's standing next to Tony Stark, and he looks like he's in some Hulkbuster Iron Man suit, similar to what he was wearing in Age of Ultron. So, I mean, there's all kinds of speculation. I mean, at the end of that movie, Hulk went into space and then ended up in Sakaar. So maybe for some reason Tony went into space and ended up in Sakaar, even in the Hulkbuster thing. So he instead of the Hulk fighting in the gladiator pit, maybe it was Tony. Anyway, people are speculating. People are speculating that that's what that was. It was funny. I was on an online forum a day or so ago, and people were like, "Why did he pass up on Tony, and it was like, and I just responded because at this point he's probably very annoyed with Tony. In every universe, he's creating Ultron before the Watcher even showed up. He's talking about let's put a armor around the world or the galaxy. So he's going to create Ultron in that universe too. So he's probably just very annoyed with Tony because of his hubris. He created a situation that might destroy the multiverse. So he just it was just funny to me. I chuckled a little bit to myself the way that he so sharply said, "Not you, Stark," when he was gathering Gamora. Anyway, so what did you think of the first part of this episode when he was I guess gathering the team together?
I just thought it was very funny at some instances. I think they did inject some type of humor into the whole situation. Like, why am I here? And it's actually the very first one was Captain Carter, where it was almost beat for beat like the beginning of Winter Soldier. So that was very bold of them to do. And
almost, but not. Yeah, there's some variation.
Yeah, almost beat for beat, except for the Baltrock, he did appear a little earlier than he did in Winter Soldier. So and then the Watcher came and basically plucked Captain Carter from the situation. So I just found that very interesting. And then they had the same original voices, except of course with the exception of Scarlett Johansson. But that I just kind of like brought me back to the beginning of Winter Soldier. So it was really, really interesting to see that the progression of it was very similar. And I think that the other ones were also quite fascinating as well. Getting Black Widow from the dystopian, everything's destroyed world. And we saw that, I think that was the last episode we saw. It was episode number 8. And That was really fascinating. And then just the fact that Strange Supreme, he went to Strange Supreme and basically said, I really need you desperately, pretty much. And he's like, oh, you finally showed up, and I have nothing better to do. But hey, glad you showed up. And you can definitely tell that there was some chemistry in terms of a kind of a buddy relationship between the Watcher and Strange Supreme. So that was very interesting overall. And like you said, the only thing that kind of threw me off was Gamora, because we haven't seen Gamora yet. That was fascinating in its own right, but it was a little bit jarring because we haven't seen her in previous episodes. So it was kind of weird in that sense. Like, how does she fit into all this multiverse? And with Killmonger, they were just about to capture him, and then he disappeared. So we didn't get to see the part where they were plotting, and then they just it was just Pepper and Shuri was just plotting, and then they just kind of rushed in to try to arrest him, basically. So I think overall it provided some humor, it provided some interesting interactions, and then also the setting in which they all came together was very fascinating. It was almost like a bar from the first Avenger, I think it was. Mm-hmm. So that was definitely interesting, and how it was like pretty much the outside of it was pretty much a void of yellow, like decorative like bright colors and things like that. So it was overall very interesting.
Yeah, it's I guess so like you said, there were definitely some funny parts, especially when he picked up Party Thor, because he was fighting Ultra Bots, and he's trying to get his attention, and he couldn't get his attention, and he just started yelling, similar to how Thor yelled on Sakaar when he was going through that tunnel. He just kept yelling, and he he did. Yeah,
exactly. That was very funny.
Yeah, this is also what I was talking about earlier when I mentioned that it would be nice if the episodes were a little bit longer, because if they were a little bit longer, I think this recruitment thing could have gone on a little bit longer, and we would have gotten a little bit more information about what happened in Wakanda, what happened with the U.S. government. But because it seems like we're skipping a bunch of beats, that would have fleshed that out a little bit nicer around Killmonger. But presumably everything's in fire, so maybe he killed T'Chaka at this point. Maybe because Shuri is running in there with some Dora Milaje, but I don't see T'Chaka. I don't see Queen Ramonda. So maybe he killed both of them, but you don't really get that information. You don't get that information before he's plucked from the universe and basically saved by the Watcher. So yeah. And we get a little bit a beat about T'Challa, Star-Lord, saving Peter Quill, but presumably I don't know. Yes. There was an issue. Sure. Presumably there was something, a couple beats that we missed that actually pulled them from Wakanda to, I don't know, I forget where Ohio. Ohio is where Peter Quill is from, right? Right? Is that
Missouri?
Missouri. So we missed a couple beats there as well. But I mean, in general, if you saw the previous episodes, you weren't confused by this. But it would have been nicer to have that breathe a little bit more, to fill in a bit more of the cliffhangers at the end of all those episodes, because we basically get dropped. We basically get dropped in a couple story beats after the end of those episodes. So you have to kind of fill it in with your imagination. And there's later parts in this episode as well where it would have been nice for them to expand it a little bit. So after he does the Guardians of the Multiverse Assembly, they, like you said, they go to that bar where Peggy and Steve were in episode 1, where they nearly kissed, and Howard interrupted them. Then the team gets an explanation about what's going on, and everyone sort of understands except for Thor, and they decide to go off on mission, because it seems like the Watchers, the Watcher chose these specific people for very specific reasons, and one of the reasons he chose this Thor instead of like the regular Thor is because he's just impulsive, and maybe he knew that his impulsivity would have called Ultron, because that's what happens almost immediately after they do that awkward toast where Doctor Strange starts to go on and start to depress everyone before T'Challa steps in and finishes the toast. It should be noted, unfortunately this is the last recording ever that we're going to get of Chadwick Boseman. There was the showrunners reported, I think a couple days ago on a podcast, that they actually were going to do a spin-off show with T'Challa Star-Lord. They were going to do a spin-off cartoon or animation rather, similar off of his story, because I guess they liked it so much. And I guess Chadwick Boseman was very keen to do it because he showed up several times in this season. I can't think of anyone else from the main cast who showed up as much as him, except for maybe Benedict Cumberbatch. Like Benedict has been in 3 episodes. 3? Was he in 4 episodes?
I believe so. Yeah. So it was like his own episode. It was the end of the previous episode he was in.
The end of the last episode, and also this episode. So yeah, of all the main MCU stars, I think he's the only person who showed up as much as he showed up as much more than anyone else. So I guess he was super keen to do this voice acting, and he was looking forward to the project. So we'll never get to see that, unfortunately. I don't know. I mean, so the plan is to, I guess, get the Soul Stone, and he does the sticky fingers thing. That whole sequence was pretty cool, though. You got to see Doctor Strange Supreme at his full power, putting protection spells on everyone, but also, besides putting the protection spells on everyone, just showing off his own power as well. He does the duplication spell that he does in Infinity War. Instead of duplicating himself, he duplicates Thor's hammer. It was a pretty cool sequence. What did you think of that part of the episode?
Yeah, I think that it was pretty creative in that they were trying to have something that Infinity, but then using a different object instead of using himself, he used the hammer to kind of trap on that time. And you saw a lot of those sort of beats in Infinity War where they're trying to like 6 against 1, and just being able to try to at least match his power. And it was really, really just a great type of sequence of events that happened. And then basically dropped the whole zombies on Ultron. That was really a funny gag in itself because the zombies haven't even visited, and it wasn't just because of just a random gag. It was actually for Scarlet Witch to show up, the Scarlet Witch zombie version of Scarlet Witch showed up. So but that was really fascinating in trying to see what the zombie Scarlet Witch can do in terms of matching Ultron's power with the Infinity Stone. So fascinating.
Yeah, that was the one part where that was one of the parts where I felt like it was a missed opportunity to go a little bit larger. If they had a little bit of time, it would have been cool to see her actually go head to head with him and her delay him a little bit longer. But didn't have enough time for that. So basically, she powered up and then he destroyed the planet. But I would actually have liked to see a bit of a fight there before he decided to destroy the planet. But they had 30 minutes to do the episode, so they just showed you, this could be a really big matchup, and then you don't really get to see the fight. Now, she doesn't have an Infinity Stone, but she is like powered by one of the Infinity Stones, similar to how Captain Marvel is. So even if it was a short fight like that in the last episode with Captain Marvel and him, it would have been like a bit more satisfying to me anyway. But again, short episode. We need to make episodes a little bit longer in season 2 to get around that problem.
Yeah, I just wonder if they made that conscious choice because it was animation that they wanted to cut it short because of that, because they were trying to attract the young crowd, or is it just because they felt as though they could tell that story within 30 minutes? Because I just want to hear that.
So I'm not sure you're wondering why they have it for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. I guess maybe because they want a younger audience, and most animation is 30 minutes. Even animation that's for adults is usually around 30 minutes, like 30 minutes, 27 minutes. So these actually are a little long for animation. But I mean, there's no rule that says it because it's animation. It has to be 30 minutes. I understand it takes a long time to make animation, but I think 40 minutes or 45 minutes would have been nice for some of these. Like they would run. So what they were trying to do, they were actually basically doing, like as I said, at phase 1. If they had these as 45 minutes, they all would have been like little movies leading up to the final. Leading up to the final confrontation, and I think that would have been nice for everyone. I don't know. Maybe they're trying to attract kids, but like there's a lot of stuff in here that's not necessarily different. Like Thanos getting cut in half in the last episode, or fighting at the core of a planet that doesn't. I mean, that's a lot of action-heavy stuff. That's probably fine for like a middle school or high school kid. After middle school or high school kid, you don't care if the episode is 45 minutes. It's not going to lose attention, lose interest, especially if things are moving quickly. So I don't know. Yeah. I think about 30 minutes as well. And this will have us. I mean, it had to do some world building, but it did it in a sort of shorthand way. They reference a bunch of things that don't exist in their universe, but exist in, say, the DC universe or the Marvel universe. It didn't have to do as much time. It didn't have to spend much time explaining things like the superhero team, even though because they weren't the focus of the show, right? So I think they got everything up they need to go in 30 minutes, but the whole Marvel universe is at play here. It would have been nicer for a little bit longer episodes, but I don't know, maybe they'll fix it in season 2. Yeah. Anyway, after it's the Scarlet Witch Ultron matchup when he destroys the planet, they jump over the planet where Black Widow is. I think the Watcher creates like portals for them to jump around, but he doesn't actually interact with them again until the very end. He's just watching, and that's how he's breaking his oath. He brought them together, and he's watching, and he's creating portals, or he created a portal for them. I guess he created portals for the Backstage universes at the end. But besides that, he's kind of hands off, just letting his plan play out, which I thought was interesting, given that he was very hands on in the last season when he was basically fighting fighting Ultron hand to hand. So, yeah. I mean, any interaction. He was quilling about pushing over a box in the previous episode. So anything about pushing over a box, and they wouldn't even have known that the box was pushed over. He could have done it like as invisibly, and he didn't want to even do that. So even though he's not like fighting Ultron head on, I think this is a fair amount of break. He'll give how high standard he has for what he will intervene in. So he was creating borders for them. He put the team together. He grabbed them for their universes, and then he, like I said, spun it into motion. I think part of the reason that he wasn't interacting is because he wasn't part of his plan. Like him being there wasn't part of his plan. Because you see at the very end, he tells them that the plan is one thing. Not only does he tell him the plan is one thing, he tells Strange, who was the guy who was integral to this plan. He didn't even include him on the real plan. Just trusted that Strange would catch on to what needed done at the end. So I don't know. I guess he did enough, even though it was, like in the fray, like putting these players on board and letting it play out was a lot of intervention. If you like the standard was, he can't even push over a box in the other universe because that breaks. So I don't know. Yeah. So they head off to Natasha's world, Ultron's world. This is the world Ultron that their fighting came from, right? So they go back to his world and they find Natasha there is one of the only humans alive, or maybe the only human alive. And she stole some from them rather, before they're able to crush it with their Infinity Stone crusher. I think what Komand'r beats with her. Yeah. So that the exchange between her and Peggy was very interesting. For a couple reasons. Like I'm not sure that she would trust herself so quickly, because it seems like on their planet they didn't have Captain Her, they had Captain America. So why would Widow immediately think, oh, you're just one of the three people that I would trust? I assume the three people would be Captain America, Clint, and Nick Fury. But I don't know. I think that was a little too quick for me. And also it was a little weird. That well, I guess it's a different universe. So maybe in this universe, Natasha knows who her father is, because in the main MCU, she didn't know who her father was. So that wouldn't be necessarily a thing that would make her trust anyone rather. She mentioned Ivan, I think, which is the name that was mentioned to her when she saw Red Skull in Endgame. And if you remember from the movie, she didn't know his name. But I guess in this universe she does. She also Captain Carter also mentions her father or her dad from the Black Widow movie that just came out. So I guess the showrunners, they should have got like scripts for all the MCU Phase 4 stuff, and they were able to incorporate that. So if you saw the movie, you got that reference that came out in July. But I think they're probably gonna do more of that in season 2. So Ultron shows up. They have another fight. What I found was really cool is the fight on the Scarlet. They were like over 100 years, which was pretty cool. Yeah. What did you make of this on Planet Earth? No. Just before that, what they did was they got to the planet. Natasha steals the Soul Stone, but Carter convinces her to work with them, and then Ultron shows up and starts to beat on everyone. And they start to gang up on him and beat on him. So there's a team between Carter and Natasha, but there's just shields there, hitting him in the head. And the plan right now is to like keep him occupied. So everyone's blasting him at the same time. And at the end of that sequence is when he tries to blow up the planet, and Doctor Strange eats the explosion. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really a fantastical fight at certain points. I like the Captain Carter Widow team up with the shield. It's very similar to Civil War fight between Bucky, Captain America, and Iron Man. But instead of one shield being passed back, and forth, it was two shields. That's pretty cool. Then saw a bit of Doctor Strange's power. Doctor Strange cast a spell to hold Ultron down, and then uses some magical chains to hold his arms down, right? And then they try to deploy the Infinity Stone Crusher, but that doesn't work because they did something from a different universe, and Gamora's Crusher was created for her universe. I think this is the point where people were confused or upset about the use of the Infinity Stone, because just before this point, when they're all beating him up, he uses Time Stone to slow down time, so he can grab the Stone, and then Doctor Strange with his Time Stone. So you have two Time Stones in the same universe, acting in providing power. And I think that's the issue that people have with the rules of the Infinity Stones within the MCU, because they don't necessarily match up with the rules of the Infinity Stones inside the Marvel universe, because you can't use Infinity Stones from one universe in another universe. But like I said, it's not something that they really established in the MCU. So I guess in the MCU you can, but it also doesn't make 100% sense. So no one has ever said that you can't use Infinity Stones from one universe to another universe, but they did establish in Infinity Universe or Endgame that the Infinity Stones sort of hold the reality together for each universe, and without them, if it's much off, the reality doesn't make sense anymore. So it's weird that his stone would work in this universe, but I don't know. I feel like they had more explaining to do at some point, because they decided to use the stones again after saying, they decided to use the stones again. So I don't think it breaks anything necessarily, as long as they spend it later on, but it is curious. So yeah. Yeah, I think that your example of the Agnes is okay, but it's also a warning because people stop taking those movies seriously because of all the inconsistency. So it's something they should keep an eye on and shouldn't necessarily rest on the world and just assume people are going to keep tuning in. I think it makes sense within the world. It's building the world, and obviously you have to set a lot of disbelief people along the right? So they have to make sense. Things have to make sense based on the rules you set up. So I keep ignoring those rules because all stuff together. You have to see what the reviews of the X-Men thought. Like all these things together, so who cares? People are watching movies there. People are spending money on care. That's what otherwise it's not as enjoyable. So they definitely keep an eye on that. Yeah, I mean, it's not. I don't think it's a major issue yet, but they definitely need to explain these rules better when they do the Spider-Man movie, and I think they have a window where they can explain this stuff in a better way so that it's not confusing people in the Spider-Man movie. Because I feel like what they gave us in Loki and also in this movie, sorry, in this show, just complicated the picture. That needs to be simplified. Needs to be simplified and explained inside of a Far From Home, and hopefully they will do that in December. So yeah. Anyway, moving on. After they try to destroy the stones, that doesn't work. Ultron's attention goes back to Doctor Strange. Just realized that Doctor Strange is the one that's actually holding the team together and actually repelling a lot of the attacks. So that gives Natasha and Carter the opening that they need, since all his attention on Doctor Strange trying to destroy him so that he can destroy everyone else. Gives them the opening they need to put a plan in place to shoot the Zola code into Ultron. There's a little bit of unrealistically high jumping in that sequence. I don't know that they've. I mean, Captain Carter in general moves faster than Steve ever did, which is pretty cool. But also, she's just not. She's kind of as far up in the sky as maybe Superman does, which is a little. I mean, she didn't like fly or anything, but like if you go back to like the original Superman, he basically just leaped very far, tall building. So instead of single down, he didn't really necessarily fly. So that was a little wonky there. It was the distance between him and her was quite a bit. But anyway, they shoot the arrow in his eye, and then Zola destroys Ultron from within, similar to the way that Ultron destroyed Jarvis in Age of Ultron. So, and then we see all of the episode. Killmonger is kind of on the periphery. He's helping. He's being trying to be useful. I don't know. Like I had to watch the episode. Would he land any like significant blows during any of these fights? And know that T'Challa and Carter are the ones who came up with the plan to steal the Soul Stone. And Thor was using the hammer fighting throughout the entire fight. He was using lightning bolts. And his hammer got duplicated on the planet to be moved over to the decimated Earth. I feel like he also fought in that pile up where everyone was kind of hitting Ultron. But I don't know that I saw Killmonger do much. That really contributed to the group until the very end when Zola took over the body and he took the stones. Using his knowledge of vibranium. That was interesting. And also somewhat predictable because it's not like they didn't hint that he was up to something. They hinted that he was up to something as soon as he showed up in the hub and Thor put the robot head down. It was obvious he was up to something. So. Sort of, yeah, it's sort of impossible for them to perform it given where they started the story, though. Like I said when we were talking about the episode, if they started that story when he was 10, sure, but as a fully grown adult who already went through all the training that he went through and had his worldview set, there was no way that they were going to reform him. Because it makes sense based on where they started the story. So yeah, it made sense that he had the heel turn at the end, and also at the end we actually see what the Watcher's plan was, which was to separate the stones from the body, to have these two beings fight against each other. Because like the original plan that Natasha and Carter come up with, like they're going to destroy Ultron and give the body of Ultron to a Nazi. That's not going to end well either. So Killmonger sort of has to be there. So you have the Nazi fight against Killmonger for the power for the stones, and they're doing that into eternity instead of this bubble universe that Strange creates around them, which is interesting. Contains it, right? Yeah. Yeah, as you were talking, I was actually thinking about how I appreciate so much the production design on this show because every time you see a universe or the barrier of the universe, there's that glass thing, and they were consistent. They were consistent on throughout the entire show. Every time you see someone moving from one universe to another, they're like breaking glass. So it's obvious that they're inside of a different universe because what's encapsulating them looks like a sphere of glass. So I appreciate their consistency throughout when they're in their the language that the visual language that they were trying to tell, or trying to use to tell the story. They were very concerned over the course of the episodes. And I guess very early on they came to the decision of doing that. So there is a character that's going to get her own show in America, Chalice, which is she's going to get a show soon, and she has the ability to smash through multiverses. She's going to show up in the Doctor Strange movie, I think. So she has the ability to smash through universes and go from one universe to another. And in the comics, the way that they illustrate that is her actually breaking glass. So maybe that's where they pull it from to be consistent. To be consistent, since they're going to do the same thing in the Doctor Strange movie. So we shall see. Yeah. I think that's near the end. So basically, we're in the bubble universe, and then the Watcher sends everyone back, except for Natasha, who refuses to go back because she's basically the only person on the planet. So he puts her back. He puts her back in the universe, or he puts her in the universe where Natasha died earlier in the season. And I guess this is Marvel basically nodding and saying, you can always put Natasha back in some other universe in the main MCU as well. They did settle the lawsuit, so they're all friends now. So maybe she will come back in some way or form. I don't think she's going to come back immediately, but they definitely showed that they can pull a Black Widow from a different universe and put her in another universe. So and that was an obvious nod to the audience. So that's almost. Yeah. It's also not the first time that they plucked someone from one universe and brought them back. So they did the exact same thing with Gamora. Like Gamora exists in the main MCU because she was pulled from another universe. So does they pulled also what is his name? Sorry, what's Nebula. So Nebula is also pulled from another universe, but the Nebula that was pulled from another universe, she was killed because she wasn't able. The Nebula from the main MCU wasn't able to convince her to break from Thanos. So they pulled people from other universes before, even in the movies. So it shouldn't be too difficult to. That was the universe because the way that the way that they explain time travel within that movie, you can't go back in time. If you could go back in time, it wouldn't be your past. You'd be in your future, and you can't be in your future. Yeah, exactly. So when they go back in time, the even act of going back in time is going, and that act is creating a new universe. So it's completely different. It's a different Gamora, and it's a different Nebula. Even though they are very similar, I mean, Thanos was still intent on destroying the universe. It's not the same one because that one was killed by Thor. His head was cut off. So yeah. And he would have been there to get his head cut off if he was pulled from the past. So it was completely different. It was a completely different Thanos, right? Yeah. Exactly. Right. So they defeated Thanos twice in the same movie. It was just one from a different universe. At the very end. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So once that Thanos followed the Avengers into the future, that universe now completely different. It doesn't have Thanos anymore because he went to a completely different universe. So no one in that universe has to worry about Thanos doing anything. That universe that will never have to deal with Thanos because he skipped off and went to a different universe when he followed Nebula. So it's all that was consistent. Like I said, it was a little complicated, but it was consistent within Endgame. But now they're adding more multiverse stuff, and some of it started getting a little convoluted. So they definitely need to explain things in the Far From Home movie. So yeah, I think the last thing that we see in the episode is we get a mid-credit scene. We haven't gotten any mid-credit scenes for the entire season. The mid-credit scene is basically Captain Carter finding the Hulkbuster, or not the Hulkbuster, the Hydra Stomper from the first episode, and it looks like Steve is alive inside, very similar to how they're keeping the Winter Soldier alive. So I guess they unfreeze him for missions. Hydra unfreezes him for missions, and then puts him back in service. Although maybe it's Hydra or maybe it's Shield that has been doing this because remember he was captured when they saved him, right, in the original timeline. And also, if you remember, Nick Fury in the original movie, the original Winter Soldier movie, he's the one who hired Batroc. So he's the one who hired him because he was concerned about things that were happening inside Shield. So if he hired Batroc, maybe he's the one who's been controlling Steve, and he knew that Steve was frozen, and he didn't tell Captain Carter. So I don't know. I feel like Captain Carter also the Jordan said will show up in the second season. So maybe we'll definitely get answers in season 2 of What If. All right, so we've been talking for an hour about this episode. It was a good episode. A lot of stuff happened. It was a season finale, so I guess talking for a half hour longer than we usually do. It's fine. Any final thoughts before we move on to Titans? Mm-hmm. yeah, all guys next, and then after that we get so first we get the Eternals movie, then Hawkeye at the end of that month. I think around Thanksgiving because Hawkeye's show is kind of like a Christmas show, so I think they're going to start like a week or so before Thanksgiving and run all the way into Christmas, and then at the end of December we'll get Far From Home. So there's a little bit of a break here, similar to the break that happened between WandaVision, sorry, not Falcon and Winter Soldier and Loki. So there's a little bit of break between Falcon and Winter Soldier and Loki, and there's a little bit of break here with MC shows until late November. But there's more MCU content before that because we get the Eternals movie before that. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to talking a bit about this week's episode of Titans. So the HBO summary of this episode 11, which again is entitled "The Call Is Coming From Inside the House," is that while Prince sets his ultimate sights on Nightwing, Gar and Rachel investigate Red Hood's place of rebirth rather. Donna and Tim reconnect in the real world, and Kory learns the truth about her past. So that's the summary. So what do you think of this episode, this season, episode 11 of Titans? No, I think like this episode as well. It was better for me than the last episode for lots of reasons that I get into in the I guess it's part of the conversation. But in general, they doubled the characters better than they usually do. Now they didn't do it perfectly, which I'll get into later on. Some of the decisions they made in the narrative didn't make any sense to me. But in general, I think even though they had one, two, three. They had 5 storylines in this episode. We were following 5 different storylines in this episode. And they intersected from time to time, but mostly they didn't until like the very end. And some of them didn't intersect at all. And that's hard to do in a show and do it well. And honestly, they haven't been doing that well. But they did an okay job. They did an okay job. This episode. It wasn't perfect, but it's much better than last week. It's been much better than most of the episodes where they tried to focus on too many characters. In general, the episodes of the season that have been good is when they've been focusing on fewer people. But they managed to do 5 different storylines in this episode, and none of them was like super annoying. Like some of them had logic errors here or there, but none of them were like super annoying for me. So yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you could. I mean, in an ideal world, they wouldn't have had 5 storylines. They would have had 3 or 2. But the fact they had 5 and it didn't turn out like a disaster, like most of the episodes when they have like that many storylines, is why I say it was a good episode. It was a better episode than most. All right. So being around the bush here because as I said, there's a fair amount happens in this episode. But also not that much happens in this episode because they're doing 5 things at the same time. You can only do so much when you're trying to do 5 things at the same time. Well, each individual story doesn't really move forward that much. That's what I mean by not much happens in one of those stories, but they're good enough for shorts. And the shorts, what happens usually when they try to do so many shorts in one episode is that they're too short and they're not even really a storyline. They're just like a mention, and in which case you should always put that in the next episode. But but again we're talking around the episode because to talk about the specifics. I mean, actually we talked about some of the specifics in the spoiler-free summary that the video gave, but there's more delve into there. But before we move on, please like and subscribe for more conversations like this. Does help the channel. So we're going to talk about spoilers. So spoilers. All right, so we could go for the beginning of the episode until the end, but because they interweaved 5 storylines, it's probably just better, like organizationally, just to talk about each storyline at a time, and then I guess touch on one they intersect. Like I said, they don't really intersect that much, so we can just talk about them separately. But the first storyline is Dick accepting Jason's challenge to fight. So a little bit in that challenge that involves Superboy. So there's a little bit of a subplot where he incapacitates Superboy with kryptonite dust or something like that. That's not, I guess that's a 6th storyline, but it's not really a storyline. So they needed to do something with Superboy and incapacitating him. Otherwise, they don't know what to do with him in this episode. Which which is fine. Okay, they don't know what to do with Superboy. We don't see Blackfire at all in this episode, which again, it's unfortunate. But it's also I like what they did with Superboy. You mentioned when so like they had to do something with him because he's the one that got Dick out at the end of the last episode when all the police attacked her, right? So they were together. But the writers had to come up with a reason why he was silent, and that's why they came up with kryptonite dust. But even though it was in the episode, it was nice to see, or good to see that they were consistent with where his concerns lie. So he was listing Gar, who he has a really good relationship with, and Blackfire, which now he has an intimate relationship with. He's really concerned about them. He doesn't want to be sidelined anymore because he wants to go out and find them. Dick is able to talk him down because he says he's going to break into the computer system. But like the second interaction, there's no way this is going to calm down again. Which is why he brings the kryptonite dust to take past him. So yeah, we should make the storyline the Dick Jason storyline and the fight at the end. I'm slowly on hope they're just not going to do bad writing and try to redeem him at the end of the season. I think they won't do bad writing, but I hope they won't, and they just leave dealing with him until season 2. I think that they will stop him by the end of the season and stop Crane by the end of the season, but I hope they don't try to redeem him in the next 2 episodes. I think it feels like, so one of the things they could have cut and that was weird was the storyline that was adjacent to this. And I'll get to that in a second, but basically, wrap up Dick's storyline. They come together, they fight. Dick bests him in the fight, but at this point, he and Crane have poisoned the city against him. So some kid shoots Dick in the neck, and for some reason he doesn't bleed out immediately. Like, and then the mob starts kicking him. While, I don't know what they think. What do they think is like his dying corpse? The people are hardcore. Like, for like regular civilians, they went like barbarian or like tribal very quickly. So going back to the mansion where Crane is set up with Jason. We get his storyline. His storyline is him having a psychotic, I guess. And sending the madness, which is, okay, I thought he was already crazy. And this makes him already crazy. I thought that was the only thing that, in this episode where I felt like this was dumb. Not necessarily just dumb, just like seeing how it plays. Like, he is obsessing over Batman at the same time where when his plan is basically coming in focus, he has the police on his payroll to basically hunt down the Titans and also take over the city. Instead of focusing on that, his master plan, he's obsessed about some recording, some psychological recording, and he just starts to spell. He's like just like the finish line. He's won. He starts to spin out and has a psychotic break. And I guess the only thing I can think of if you guys like the possible bad writing or redeeming Jason, seeing him in the state is why Jason goes decides to say no, decides to come back. But like if they need Crane to go super crazy for Jason to figure out that what he's doing is wrong, and he needs too much. He needs way too much he's far more than a regular functioning human being that needs to come back and redeem himself. That's way too much of a line for him to have to cross for everyone to have to endure. Because at this point, he's killed Hank. He's killed indirectly a bunch of other people through the drug. He's killed indirectly. Well, he didn't really have anything to do with the war supply contamination. He was trying to go back in that episode. Until he decided. I guess he doesn't want to go back. This is like the episode. So he had nothing to do with that. But that does have something to do with the fact that he's trying to himself. And then in the last episode, he decided, what, I'm going to go Crane. So I don't think Crane having a psychotic break is enough of a thing to redeem him, because even if Crane was completely sane, what he was doing was evil and criminal and wrong. So you would think that Jason would have some sort of more compass to say, these things are evil and criminal and wrong. He doesn't have to see like Crane foaming at the mouth and say, I don't want to follow this guy anymore. Shouldn't have be foaming at the mouth for him to not follow him. Like all the things that he's doing, all the things that he's doing, play should be enough. But whatever. That's the only thing I can think of for why they added this tangent, basically. Like I said, Crane's nearly won, and then he starts this now. What do you think about this line? Yeah, that might have been a use time. Yes. If you check in on Lord Gordon, checking on Blackfire, one of those people who actually, I don't know. I'm not saying we don't care about Crane, but they decided to give him a completely different storyline. Not necessarily unrelated to everything that's happened in the previous season, but his mother showed up once in the season, and then he killed her. We know that he doesn't like Bruce, but like there was nothing that hinted at the fact that he valued Bruce's opinion of him so much that it makes him smile in the earlier season. I mean, why do we care? This guy who lived in jail. Why do we care? Because he said something that maybe his mother said. Maybe Bruce agrees with his mother, or what? I don't know. So yeah, I think. It's also, yeah. So yeah, that was definitely part of the episode that was weird. Except for, like I said, the only thing I think is that they put that in there to help snap Jason out of whatever he was doing. But like I said, Jason stood right next to him. He killed a hospital room full of doctors, and he didn't flinch for that. And just because he cut up a guy, that's the issue. I mean, murder is murder. I guess he cut the guy. Also, he cut his face. So they also had him saying no more mask. So he doesn't have a mask anymore because he started up his face, and now the mask is his face. So whatever. So he won't wear a spherical mask anymore because he carved mask into his face. But whatever. Sure. Anyway, then we get the investigation by Gar and Rachel into the Lazarus pit. This one was, I guess, a medium for me. This whole, I mean, I'm glad Rachel's back. I don't really like the CGI of her powers. They look a little wonky. They look a little cheap. This was fine. I mean, we knew that earlier in the season we saw that the Lazarus pit was used to bring Jason back. I hope this is part of their redemption thing, because I remember earlier when we talked about this, they did not hint at the fact that Jason came back wrong. If you try to go back to this Lazarus pit and say, oh, the reason that Jason's involved is because he came back wrong, that's them fixing something earlier. They could have just dropped a line in during that episode when he came out of the Lazarus pit where Crane says, you might be a little bit off or something like that. They didn't even mention that. We just see Jason doing poor, terrible things. So the only thing I can think of, the only reason that they would be going to the Lazarus pit is to say that this is why he's a little bit off, because he's not really seeing drugs, but he's also an influence of the Lazarus pit because he's already alive. Unless they're going to bring Dick there, because Dick got shot in the neck, right? Maybe that's why he need the Lazarus pit, but yeah. Yeah, it was fine. Yeah, it was fine. After they used it to revitalize Dick, it's fine. It doesn't make sense why I would go and search out the Lazarus Pit. Like how Jason came back to life is not necessarily as important as stopping Jason from wreaking havoc on the city. They can figure that out later. I'm not sure that figuring that out is going to stop him. That he's alive and he's killing people. I think that's probably the priority. So I don't understand what the Scooby-Doo thing is still about trying to track down how he came back to life. Yeah, yeah, which is bad, right? Right. But that's not a priority to anyone. That's not a priority to anyone. No one cares. No one cares. Like I mean, it's interesting, I guess, because he was dead. But given that he's killing people, and also given that he's killing people, and he's also turning the entire city against them, I feel like those are higher priorities. Than, figuring out how he came back to life. Because they already know he's killing people. They already know they're working with Crane. They already know that the city was turned against them because of these two guys. These seem like top line priorities to me. I'm a superhero. Yes, they did. Yes, they gave Gar these side missions over the last several episodes. First he talks to Jason's friend, whose name is escaping me, Molly. And he's also doing his own investigation the entire time. But the fact that his investigation leads to let's figure out what the Lazarus Pit is did seem like it made sense to me. But whatever. Like I said, this didn't bother me as much as the frame thing. It's not neither here nor there, and that's how they bring back the shore. Even though it makes sense they were looking for it in the first place. Uh, right. Yeah. Who knows? All right, so the next storyline. So we've been through three storylines now. Yeah, and at the end of that storyline, Rachel realizes that Dick is in danger, and you see the bad animation around her powers, and that's kind of that's left. Then storyline number 4, 5 is Donna and Tim reuniting. This is probably this and the one with Kory are probably. I think I cut this and it was just the Dick storyline, Dick and Jason storyline, the Koriand'r storyline, and this storyline. It would have been a solid episode. This one is okay, also okay. So like Donna's reuniting with Tim. We know that they have a deep relationship from the afterlife when they're both dead. We see a little bit more about Tim's life and how he understands or knows everything as much as he does about the Bat family because he has his own sort of like Bat cave of like repurposed and like thrown out electronic equipment, which is convenient but also kind of in line with the way that they characterize Tim in the comics. He's like a tech genius. So that was interesting, pretty cool. We also get knowledge. We also get the fact that the information that the police officers are on the payroll of Crane and Barbara is arrested. It looks like they're for some reason they're going to just like push people out of their homes or something like that. I didn't get that part specifically. Did you understand what the plan was? Like they kept coming around asking, "Do you have any weapons? Are you there alone?" Like it was funny that they didn't attack them just then. After they asked whether or not they had any weapons, I feel like they kept asking. They're asking because there's all this looting. And I in that scene, I thought maybe they were just some people that were dressed up like police officers. They beat up some police officers and they were asking these questions so they could loot them, but they left. So yeah, that was those. Yeah, it's cut. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, 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 yeah. You're right. Now that I'm thinking about it, that was an issue. I mean, it's not a giant issue. It's an issue though. Like they should have been in the hospital at the same time, basically. The fact that Tim is out is because of some magic afterlife stuff, but his father should still be in the hospital if he's alive. He shouldn't be out of the hospital because specifically the way that he got shot. The reason he got shot is because he was going trying to find who shot his father. Right? He was like trying to track down Crane or whoever. Right? And then he got shot. After confronting Dick and telling him that he knew who he was, he said he wanted to help. He wanted to help because his father was shot. If I'm remembering correctly. So there's no way that he's out of the hospital. His father's out of the hospital already. Not only out of the hospital, but he seems to be like fine. And they didn't even. Okay, yeah, they could have dropped the line and just could have said, "Mom said your father's shot, and then you're shot because you're doing all this stuff." They could have explained that better. It just went that so quickly that I didn't even really think about it. But yeah, they definitely could have explained that better. It wasn't his brother that was explaining the policing. It was his cousin. If you remember earlier, if you're obviously on his mom's side, his cousin who gets into trouble because they established that as well. But like he's like a street kid. Um, So the way we leave that storyline is that apparently the police officers are preparing to attack his block, and they're going to try to defend his block. Donna and him are going to try to defend his block. So that's the end of that storyline. And then we get Kory's storyline, which finally makes all the Koriand'r stuff make sense from the entire season, because they give you so little throughout the entire season that none of it really makes sense. I mean, so now it makes sense. Finally, it makes sense. But it was a weird thing that was in the background, and it was pulling focus from the main storyline every episode that it was in. Every time some weird thing was happening to Kory, you didn't get any answer about what the weird thing was. But yeah, we find out that her mother and father were even worse than we thought. Because in the previous episode, we found out that the reason that Blackfire killed them was because they basically let the masses let loose on her, or rather, they blamed her and they were going to let the masses kill her. So come to find out, they started betraying the child when she was a baby. Yeah. Yeah, so they stole this child's power when she was a baby, and gave it to Koriand'r, because Koriand'r was the one who was announced to do the hair. And it was just, I guess, a little bad if they changed the hair, or their lie would be discovered if they changed the hair, right? Because there'd be no reason to change the hair, and both of the children had power. So the spare, the heir having power is what's necessary. It's not necessary for the spare to have power. So they took her power, and they gave it to Koriand'r. They took, I guess now I know how to pronounce her name, Komand'r. They took Komand'r's power, gave it to Koriand'r. So yeah, this is interesting. It's not anything that has happened in the comics, I think. It's not a storyline from the comics. I mean, I don't know Starfire's storyline as well as I do, say, like Dick Grayson or Tim Drake. But I don't think this is something from the comics. I actually like the storyline. Now that I understand it. but they dripped it out in like drops throughout the season, and it was just mostly annoying until you got to this episode. Yeah. Does it redeem that episode? No, it doesn't redeem that episode because it just makes the other episode where she's like going into a trance make sense. Like obviously her body was trying to tell her something. It was trying to unlock some information for her, and it kept trying to unlock it. Possibly the fact that her sister was close in proximity actually is what started this whole process. The fact that her sister was the one reaching out to her, and that maybe unlocked something that her body kept trying to tell her. I could fill that in, and if they went to write a couple lines to explain that in the next episode, that would make sense to me. What didn't make sense to me is her letting her out in the first place, and what happened in this episode doesn't make what she did in that episode letting her out make any sense still, because she doesn't explain why she killed her parents until several episodes after that. So she let her out without that knowledge, without the knowledge that her parents were basically feeding, having the people go against her. We get that information in the episode entitled 51%, if you remember. 51 if you have a decision in one is in both bad decisions, but one is 51% better. So that episode is still bad. I've been thinking about this whole season. So but I do like the storyline in this episode for her. I do like the back and forth that she has with the immigrant mother. I don't think they ever she's just ever like generically African. They don't really say what country she's from. I don't think. I mean, it sounds like she has a Nigerian accent, but that's a little problematic that they don't actually say what country she's from. But whatever. I generally like the storyline. I like the fact that we find that she has her own powers. That even though she stole she didn't steal her. Her parents stole Blackfire's power. She has her own powers that were obviously not evident to the midwife that helped bring her into the world. So I guess we'll get to see what those powers are, because her powers are manifest in a completely different color. They're like black, similar to Blackfire's powers. So I guess we'll see. I'm now more interested in what's going on with her, because they actually explained what was going on with her. I'm interested in how Blackfire is going to take this information